You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
Mondays with McGuire. I'm Dan. He's Pierre. And it just so happened that the Leafs played their early matinee Christmas break game. What's it called? The Young Guns? The Futures? What's it called?
Young Gen, I think. Or Next Gen. Next Gen.
Next Gen, not to be confused with Next Gen Stats. They just like packing the barn with families and kids. And the problem is they were handed a loss because the Winnipeg Jets were in town. Man, the Jets are a juggernaut.
They're really good, Dan. Obviously, you know, the top line when you got Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele doing a lot of dirty work and Gabe Vilardi, that makes them lethal. But you see some of their role players too, whether it's Adam Lowry, whether it's a Nino Niederreiter, you know, whether it's Mason Appleton. You look at Josh Morrissey on defense or Neil Pionk on defense. They have all these subtle little players that do so many good things, and I love their coach and the way he coaches, Scotty Arniel. I've known Scotty a long time. I think they're a legitimate contender. They're a little under the radar, even though they had this great start. Their power play has been electrifying. I know they scored a huge power play goal today against Toronto, but Winnipeg's a fun team to watch, and it's because they've created all these roles for players, Dan, that have worked fantastically well for them.
And Connor Hellebuyck is at a space in the NHL in which he's kind of like at the Roy Halladay stage. So Roy Halladay, if you talk to opposing players, they said when he was on, he looked like he was 10 feet tall on the mound. It looked like he was on top of you. Connor Hellebuyck is already a massive individual, but the way he's playing now, it must look like there's no net.
The first time I ever saw Connor Hellebuyck play, I was playing at UMass Lowell, which is just outside of Boston. And you're like, I wonder if this kid's going to be athletic enough to be good because he was so big, to your point. And then you've seen him along the way, and every step that he's taken, Dan, that size has always become more and more apparent because the athleticism has become more and more apparent with him. The one thing he's going to have to do now to stabilize his reputation, because he's this great regular season goalie, can he take them past the first round in the playoffs? And if he can, and I think he can with the team around him, he's going to be really, really difficult to beat. He gives Winnipeg a legitimate chance to be a contender.
The Maple Leafs were on a high, and then they started the second of a back-to-back, a game I was in attendance for against the Islanders on Saturday. Yep. Beautiful seats. I was one row behind the Leaf bench. We'll get into my take on the team in a second, but this is a rough stretch. They've got 3 games in 4 days. And they've just completed it, and they only won one of those games.
Yeah, well, I didn't like their game on Saturday, and I don't think you liked their game either. Their game in Buffalo was a little bit of mascara for them because I didn't think they played as well as what the score said. I actually thought Buffalo did some good things, even though they found a way to win with Matt Murray in goal for the first time in forever for Matt, and I couldn't be happier for a guy. I worked with Matt when he was in Ottawa. He's a tremendously good person and a guy that's got a legitimate chance, I think, to get his career back on track. So that was a good first step for him. The elephant in the room, Dan, and you were behind the bench. You can see this is a different team when they don't have Auston Mathews.
Yes.
Whatever. They're a different team. Yeah. And that's respect for Auston as well. The one thing I'd say about today's game, though, and I thought they played hard, John Tavares is far from being done. He's a real good player. For all
he scored his 16th.
16's elite. 16, Mitchell Marner's so good. He wanted to take that game over, and he tried his derriere off to do it.
If you score 20 a season in the NHL, you're guaranteed jobs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It doesn't matter how old you are, I don't think, does it?
No, it shouldn't. The one thing I'd say about John, it's more than just scoring. It's his playmaking. I think, and Gordon Miller brought this up on his show today with Mike Johnson, I think John Tavares is one of only 5 players that's ever scored 200 goals for 2 different teams. You know, think about it. So he just scored. He's got 201 with Toronto, and he had 200 with the Islanders. So when you start to do the math, you're starting, wow, this is rarefied air where Johnny T is right now. But he wins faceoffs. He can check the other team's best players. He's great in board battles. He's an awesome player in the slot. He's a real good player in the slot. So I think he's far from being done. And now the big question is for Brad Treliving and Brendan Shanahan, do we want to broach the idea of a contract extension with John Tavares going forward?
Now let's get into my take on the Leafs. I was directly behind Coach Berube the entire game. First off, he chews a piece of gum like nobody's business the entire game. What I saw was a team that I would not be frightened of. There was no chatter. At no point did the Leafs have anything going in that game against the Islanders. While the Islanders seemed like the Montreal Canadiens in their dynasty years, they were coming in waves.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's gotten into the Leafs, but I suspect that was the same feeling that people in the building on Monday at the Scotiabank Arena had as well. There is nothing to fear in that team.
Not right now. I think they've hit a little bit of a lull in the season. The one thing I would say to be on their side and defend them, this is a hard time of the year to win games at home. Most teams would rather be on the road. Look at Ottawa. They went on the road. They had amazing success on the road. If you look at a lot of the teams that are winning with consistency right now, they're the road teams. Because when you're home at Christmas time or the holiday season, you're taking care of Christmas concerts. You're taking care of Christmas shopping. You're doing all these different things that hockey players aren't used to having. The one thing about hockey, you're in rhythm. When you're a good player, when you're a good team, you're in rhythm. And when the rhythm breaks down with ancillary things that are just part of every human being's life, you're not as good a hockey player. And I think for the Leafs, that definitely happened Saturday. That was one of their worst performances in a while. And that's not to take anything away from Patty Roy or the New York Islanders, who deserved that win full on. But you could see when they played a better team today without Auston Mathews, Dan, that was a bit of a problem for them. It was.
And here's what the Leafs have to face whenever they're at home on Saturday night, which is very often during the season. All you have to do is stick around and see the opposing team where the friends and family go and meet the players in the stands after. Yeah. My friend works for the Islanders, so I went up to say hi. I said, is this an above average amount of people here? He goes, this is unlike any other city we go to. It was, they filled up an entire section. There's that many hockey players from that region. So you take into account friends and family in attendance, your Saturday night in Toronto on Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah.
You have that counting against you when you're the Leafs every single time a team comes to town.
It's such a good point, and it doesn't get nearly enough respect amongst the media, I think, more than anything else. I just remember when we would come, when I was coaching in Pittsburgh, Dan, and we would go into Montreal or we would go into Quebec with our group, Mario Lemieux, it was at another level. You know, people don't realize it, especially in Quebec, back in the old Coliseum. That was not a refined, modern building like what you have in Toronto right now. And it was intimidating. Like, we'd come in there and we would wipe the floor with them a lot of times. But the amount of people that were there to see Mario was overwhelming. And I think it put a lot of pressure on the home team, more than they probably were used to. So I think your point has got a lot of foundation to it, Dan. I really do.
If you look at Joseph Woll, is this his now entire schedule to burden with Stolarz out? Will they give the backup a shot? Because Stolarz is out 4 to 6 with his knee surgery or scope or something he had done to his knee.
Yeah, no. So we're going to see. I don't know if Hildeby's going to get another opportunity to play. Joseph Woll, I think, gets the ball on Friday. Is it Friday? I think the 27th. Is that when they're playing again? They play at Detroit, if I remember correctly.
I'll look it up for you.
Yeah, so I think they play at Detroit. It's their next game, at 27th, if I remember correctly.
And that's Woll's until Stolarz comes back?
No, and I think what happens is if Matt Murray can keep it on the rails, maybe he gets another opportunity to come up and play. So
yeah, you got Friday against the Wings, and then they're at home again on a Saturday night in Toronto against Ovi and the Caps.
Right. So this is why I'm saying they're going to need to have a second goalie, and it wouldn't surprise me if maybe Matt gets another opportunity to come up. Unless they're just convinced that Hildeby's the guy that can help Joe Woll. But I don't think they're just going to run Joe Woll. I'd just be surprised by that.
I mentioned Coach Berube with the gum. So that is his go-to device to deal with stress. What is the oddest instrument that a coach or an assistant coach that you saw, or maybe you did, behind the bench where you're like, I don't know if that's working for you, or whatever you're doing, keep it up?
Keenan and Bowman used to chew ice. and they used to chew big gobs of ice, and you could hear it cracking on the bench. I remember once we were playing in Chicago, in Old Chicago Stadium. I was standing next to Scotty, and the glass between the two benches in the Old Chicago Stadium was really low, so you could hear what was going on the other bench. And I heard Mike chewing ice too, and it was like a serenade. I heard ice on both sides of me. Both guys were chewing ice, so that'd kind of be the weirdest one. I'd have a hard time doing that then because I'd be afraid it would break my fake teeth. So that's why I wouldn't be chewing the ice.
Same. I just broke my front tooth recently. A little chip came out. And so, the top of a deodorant stick, how it's got that little cap on it. So I used my teeth to take it off. Right. So I went into the dentist to get it fixed. And the dental hygienist says, I know a trick for taking those, the little plastic top off the deodorant when you get it. I said, oh, what is it? She said, you twist it up. I felt like the biggest idiot. I thought she was like going to give me like some big mystery revealed. And I'm like, no, you're just telling me essentially, you're an idiot. You just twist the deodorant up. Yeah. So I have the same front tooth problem. So speaking of Berube, I guess this is where you play good cop, right? You're going into the Christmas break. You say, guys, go do what you got to do. Be with your friends, be with your family. We'll figure this out when you get back. You aren't sending them home with take-home projects.
No, absolutely not. This is where you give the guys an opportunity to rest, and especially if Austin's out for a long period of time, you're going to need Johnny Tavares. You're going to need Mitchell Marner. You're going to need Willie Nylander. You're going to need the guys in the back end. One guy that didn't play today that was really apparent, Christopher Tanev. You could tell he wasn't in the lineup against the better Winnipeg Jet players. They need to get him back in the lineup too. So lots of little things, I think, for Toronto. But to me, the biggest thing is so far celebrate a lot of the successes that you've had. And one of them you touched on right away. I think Mitchell Marner's had a phenomenal year to start. And he'll just keep getting better. Willie Nylander will keep getting better. What about the size factor on the wings with Bobby McMahon, with Max Pacioretty, with Matthew Nyes? You've got Steven Lorentz. They've got a lot of big things that you got to have to win in the playoffs. Plus, you had Tanev and you had Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I kind of like where the Leafs are. They need a little break right now. It's a good thing for them, not a bad thing.
Is Pacioretty maybe the biggest surprise for the Leafs so far this season?
Maybe for the team, not for me, because I've known the kid forever. He grew up in New Canaan, Connecticut. He played for the Mid-Fairfield Yankees. I mean, I've known his game for a long time. The biggest thing for him is having his health. And because he's still a really good athlete and he takes real good care of himself. If you were to ask me the biggest surprise, how easily Bobby McMahon has been scoring, that would be the one, because I've known, again, Bobby's game for a long time. Kid from Wainwright, Alberta, played at Colgate University, undrafted player. He's scoring at a pace where it wouldn't surprise me now if he got to 20, 25 goals. That's pretty darn good. Pretty darn good as a depth player.
Pacioretty also, he seems to be the guy, give him any role, he's up to the task, given his longevity in the league and his, I believe, respect among other players.
That's really well said, and I'll tell you why. When you're a player that's been close to winning the Cup or close to going on long runs and it hasn't materialized, you get frustrated. And for Max, he's been in a lot of different cities where it's close but not close enough. So you're a motivated person. You're a captive audience. Whatever the coach tells you, you're prepared to do it. So I think you're spot on when you talk about Max that way.
So the Leafs have every reason to just forget this game. I'll give you the reasons they can do it in case they needed some. It's the Jets. Hey, they're a really good team. It was a 2:00 game on a Monday, and it was the third game in 4 days. So if there's ever a game in which the coaching staff will say that one never happened, I believe this is the game they could slot into that spot.
We're solely on the same page. I totally agree. And plus, you don't want to ruin. Players don't get a lot of time to get rewards over the course of a season because the games are so tight. And you got a lot of guys who are going to be playing in the Four Nations event. So, again, there's more pressure on some of those players as well. That's going to be a big question for Toronto, by the way. Does Auston Mathews go and play in the Four Nations event if he's not 100%?
Yeah.
Because I would tell you as an owner, or if I was Keith Pelly, I'd be asking those questions of Brendan Shanahan and Brad Treliving and Craig Berube. That's just something that you got to think about as a management team. That's number one. But number two, players don't get a chance to get a lot of reward. This is their one time where they get to be with family. They get to be with friends. They get a reward for a solid start to the year. And you don't want to, I don't think as a coach, you want to dampen that. You want to elevate it. And I think that's what they'll have done.
And for players, is this the only time of the season you can actually live stress-free with the holidays and a roster freeze in effect?
I don't know about the guys with the Rangers. I'm a little concerned about those guys. And I'm not trying to make light of it. I feel terrible for some of the guys who are there. There's some real good people there. That being said, this is one of the only times over the course of a year where guys don't have to get nervous.
Okay, so the game plan for the Leafs, I don't know how Berube is coaching this team, if he's doing 5-game increments, 10-game increments, if he's doing quarters, who knows? But I think it's safe to assume a new slot in that game plan begins when they come back.
I would think so, Dan. Absolutely.
They're starting from zero.
Yeah, you're going to start over again. Absolutely. I think that's the right way to pursue it. I think do the month of January and see where you are going into the break when you have the Four Nation event. But again, a lot of guys from Toronto are going to be part of that too, unless, injuries happen or whatever. The other thing too that's interesting to watch when you talk about Berube, I think he's really smart. He's delegated the power play to Mark Savard. He's delegated the penalty kill to Lane Lambert. He's got Mike Van Ryan on the bench. His voice, even though it's a loud one, he's got enough quality people around him, Dan, where his voice doesn't get old. The late Badger Bob Johnson, when I worked for him, he would delegate authority all the time because he used to tell us, the guys he delegated to, I want you to talk because I don't want them to be bored of me. It's a long season. I want them to, when it comes to playoff time, I want them to know my voice counts. And I think Craig knows that as well as anybody.
And if he doesn't have a gum sponsorship, if you are in Toronto with the media market and the sponsorship potential, and he doesn't have one by the end of a season, he needs a new marketing team. He needs a new agent.
We would agree. And I would, volunteer for that position because I think it would be good for you and I to go out there and sell it.
Oh, my goodness. It sells itself. Anything with the Leafs has sponsorship attached to it. By the way, so I was in the mucky muck seats, like I told you where I was sitting. I had not seen, I don't know if you have either, the new renovations that are right in behind the benches, the new bar and restaurant area.
I have not. No, I have not.
It is otherworldly. And now I know why the people aren't in their seats at the start of the periods. I'm like, I don't want to leave here. This is too nice. It smells good. This is beautiful. So they've created something so nice. That's why the people are slow to wander back to their seats.
Which I understand. They're paying for that too. So it's a good opportunity for them to enjoy the highlights of being a top Original Six team in the National Hockey League. It's always good. Toronto's a great hockey town, as you know. But yeah,
even better though. Even better is not paying for it and going for free. And then
as Dan O'Toole did,
as I mentioned on Boomsies today, I said at the start of the second period, we're in one of these areas where it's all free, everything. And I said, hey, we're the assholes not in the seats right now. I said, that's us. I said, people at home are yelling at us right now. And then everyone kind of started to make I'm like, no, I'm not telling you to go to your seats. Like, this is great here, but we're those people that everyone's yelling at right now.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's still, I've seen that in a lot of different rinks now. New York's got it. Obviously, Boston's got it. They've got it going on down in Tampa. So a lot of different cities are doing that.
I couldn't believe when I saw the drone fly through of the Boston arena, how beautiful their concourses and stuff are. It puts a lot of arenas to shame.
Oh yeah, no, a lot of these owners have sunk money into their own buildings. Look what Mr. Vinnick did down in Tampa. I mean, remember that was just a concrete mausoleum. He went in there and put $30 to $35 million of his own money into it. Now it's a beautiful arena down in Tampa. It really is.
Best rink, fan perspective wise, amenities, who would you give that to in the NHL right now?
Well, I was going to say, as a kid growing up, it's hard to beat the Montreal Forum.
Oh, the best. I'm there with you. I would still have the Bell Center there for fan experience, for atmosphere, for every player who's ever played there agrees with me. They say it's the best atmosphere in the NHL.
For amenities, it's hard to beat what you have in Toronto. It is, based on what you're telling me. But Montreal, still to me, just because I'm a bit biased. Just a bit.
Hey, I grew up watching the Habs because that's what we got on Chex TV in Peterborough.
Hey, a lot of great Peterborough Petes were Montreal Canadiens, too.
Hey, Bobby Gainey and I played for the same hockey team, the Immaculate Conception House League team in Peterborough. He played on that team. I played on that team. So that's my connection, along with being from the same hometown as Bob Gainey.
There you go. See, there you go.
Pierre, happy holidays. Merry Christmas, my friend. I hope Santa's good to you.
You're kind. Thank you, Dan. I've had a great time working with you and Julie. It's been a delight. And thanks for having me on tonight. Look forward to many more visits with you once we get to the start of the new year, my man. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.